Let us remind ourselves of what we face at the moment. Limits on housing benefit, that means tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people face losing their accommodation. Disability tests run by the multinational Atos are forcing tens of thousands of people onto basic job seekers allowance, despite the fact they are clearly not fit for work. Essential council services for the elderly, the disabled and children are being slashed up and down the country because of a 26% cut in central government support. Working class youth will be unable to complete secondary education because of the cuts in education maintenance allowance. And even if they do, they will be unable to go to university because they will have to find the £9,000 per annum tuition fees. The Health and Social Services Bill currently before Parliament, which will end central government responsibility for delivering universal health care free at the point of need. That responsibility will pass to healthcare multinationals running commissioning consortia, which will have powers to decide what health services to deliver, whether to charge for them, and how much to charge for them. What we are seeing, therefore, is the wholesale dismantling of what is called by many the welfare state. I say by many because I don't regard it as a welfare state. In reality, we don't have one in this, one of the richest countries in the world. We do have a system of state welfare, to be sure, but that is something quite different. A welfare state, in my view, is a state committed to the welfare of its entire people, where access to adequate housing, access to free and universal education, to free and universal healthcare are regarded and treated as basic human rights. Such a state, of course, cannot be a capitalist state which exists to defend the rights to private ownership and exploitation. A welfare state, as I think we have had very clearly explained to us earlier this afternoon, can in fact be only a socialist state. What is happening today in Britain demonstrates this point conclusively, especially if you look at how the Cuban state managed an economic crisis far more severe in the 1990s following the collapse of the Soviet Union. Today in Britain, for instance, we are told that we are living beyond our means, that the debt is unsustainable, that the NHS has to be reformed if it is to survive, that we cannot afford the current level of state university investment. This in a country where there are 500,000 millionaires, millionaires being people with more than $1 million, if you like, spare cash, independent of property they hold, each with their own tax evasion scheme. Gigantic multinationals also with their own tax evasion schemes. Vast financial companies to whom tax evasion is just a standard way of doing business. £120 billion is the estimated loss each year to the state as a result of all this tax evasion. Clearly, the wealth of this country is vast, coming as it does in the main through the plunder of oppressed nations, of oppressed countries throughout the world, engineered through the City of London. Yet what is in question is not the degree of wealth, but its social form, that of private property and the social relations dependent on it. In conditions of economic and social crisis, such as we see today, defence of the interests of private property are not compatible with systems of state welfare, systems that became available in most European countries in the post-war period, proving possible in times of economic boom, those exceptional circumstances from 1945 to the mid-1970s, on the one hand, and on the other hand, provided through political necessity of making serious concessions to the working class in the face of the challenge from the Soviet Union and the socialist countries. Those conditions no longer hold today, and it could be argued have not held for a considerable period of time. So key pillars of state welfare in this country are being undermined or destroyed. But as I said, we need to contrast that to the period of economic crisis in the 1990s in Cuba, when GDP fell by 35% as a result of the collapse of the Soviet Union, and the US began to ratchet up the economic blockade. During that period, as a little appendix to our pamphlet on the cuts explains, there were no moves to privatise health or education. Far from it. The share of Cuban GDP spent on social programmes rose by 34% between 1990 and 2003. The number of Cuban doctors rose by 76%, dentists by 46%, nurses by 16%. The number of maternity homes rose by 86%, daycare centres for older people by 107%. From 1989, infant mortality, always a key measure of the quality of health services. Infant mortality in Cuba fell from 11.1 per thousand in 1989 to 6.4 thousand in 1999, and in 2009, 1999, I beg your pardon. Now it is just above 4 per thousand, and I think is just better than that in Britain, and certainly better than in areas, working class areas of Britain. In other words, amidst the devastation that was caused by that economic crisis, the Cuban people and the Cuban state made a choice to preserve and extend essential welfare, not to cut it, but to develop it and increase its role in terms of their daily lives. Such a response is only possible with a system based on different social relations to that which exist in this country here. A socialist system, a genuine welfare state. What this tells us, I think, as we face up to the political problems presented by today's imperialist crisis, what takes place in Cuba matters to us. It matters to us because it is the alternative. The alternative that we must constantly put before people in this country as they take their stand against the impact of the crisis on their lives. Socialism is a possibility, it is a necessity, and it exists in Cuba today. Thank you.
Tuesday, Fight Racism, Fight Imperialism has a readers group meeting entitled Britain Out of the Middle East, Imperialist Hands Off Libya. So we'll be able to discuss a lot of the manoeuvres in North Africa. That's at 7:30 this Tuesday in the Lassa Gallery pub, which is on Charles Street by the side of the BBC. Bank holiday May the 2nd, a couple of weeks' time, in the afternoon, we're having a Speak Out Against the Cuts event, where we'll be stopping outside particular shops on Market Street that are supporting the government's cuts agenda. And there are quite a lot of them, such as Topshop, Boots, etc. That'll be starting at 12 o'clock at Lloyds TSB, and those of you who've got one of these agendas, there's a few of them around, so you can take that away, information on there. Can we just thank Comrade Raphael? He needs to go and catch his train. Round of applause. We have got a bit of time for some more discussion now.
Can I just make another plug? Fernando will be back talking in Manchester. He's here for a while, but in Manchester, in the Instituto Cervantes on Deansgate, the Spanish Cultural Institute, on the 5th of May. If you go into the University of Manchester website, or you can contact Bob, who's got my email. We're talking specifically about Cuban culture And we'll be hopefully showing a film that some of you might have seen already with subtitles. So there'll be interpreting and subtitles.
Yo también quería invitarlos
And the film is called The Sugar Curtain, El Telón de Azúcar. It's a very, very interesting film about Cuba. The Sugar Curtain. Sugar Curtain. Okay, that's on the 5th of May. I think it's from 4 till 7, but you can find information as of tomorrow or so on the university website.
Will there be translation?
It's all subtitled. There's interpreting, headphones, and the film is subtitled, so it'll be Spanish, English, bilingual.
Okay, thank you, comrade. Right, we're going to have to draw the meeting to a close there because we're running out of time. We will have a little bit of time for people to have an informal chat while we're clearing the room and we can look at the stall, etc. We will need a bit of a contribution towards the cost of the room if you can make a donation in the tin on your way out. I want to thank Comrade Fernando for speaking on behalf of everyone. I think it's been very inspiring. We had quite a varied discussion. Around with
Thank all of you. He's been telling me for the last 5 minutes. I want to thank all of these people. This has been a very interesting exchange.
mi nombre y el de mi colega que se tuvo que retirar. Yo quisiera agradecer la atención y el interés mostrado y los invito a que profundicemos juntos en la causa de los 5 cubanos presos en los Estados Unidos, que nace de una traición de ese gobierno a la confianza que el gobierno cubano tiene en el pueblo de los Estados Unidos. Nosotros, nuestro país, esas personas que hoy están presas, descubrieron una serie de planes de terroristas de la derecha en Miami que ponían en peligro a personas de los Estados Unidos. Y nosotros le entregamos ese informe al gobierno de los Estados Unidos y la respuesta fue buscar la otra punta de la madeja y encarcelar a esos 5 compañeros.
He's saying we can also have a very productive dialogue about the Miami 5. He's just explained a little bit, but I think you're probably all familiar with the situation in Miami 5. But saying that, again, that prospect for dialogue between the North American people and the Cuban people allows some measure of hope. But he wanted to thank you all on behalf of Rafael Sardinia and himself for having such an interesting dialogue with all of you.
And can we finally thank Comrade Parr for translating?